Runway 33 at Warsaw Shopping Airport is covered in white foam. Fire trucks line the edges. Ambulances wait with doors open. Over the threshold comes LOT Polish Airlines Flight 16, a Boeing 767 with 231 people on board, and no landing gear. From the tower and the fire trucks below, the nightmare is obvious. The jet's belly is clean. No wheels hanging, no doors open. Just smooth metal and engines, seconds from scraping across concrete. In the cockpit, two pilots make tiny corrections. There's no second attempt. Too hard and the fuselage can tear. Too far off the centerline and a wing can dig in and flip the aircraft. In the cabin, 221 passengers sit braced, heads down, waiting for metal to meet runway. At 1:39 p.m., the belly hits the foamed centerline. Sparks roar from the right engine. The 767 slams forward, grinding through runway lights, smoke and steel. And whatever happens in the next few seconds will decide the fate of everyone on board. This is the story of LOT Flight 16. To understand how it came to this, we have to go back to a problem no one saw and a tiny detail no one thought to check. Earlier that day is just another long-haul departure out of the United States, November 1st, 2011, early morning at Newark Liberty. LOT Polish Airlines Flight 16, a Boeing 767-300ER, registered SP-LPC, lines up on runway 4 left for Warsaw with 221 passengers, 2 pilots and 8 cabin crew, 231 people expecting a routine Atlantic crossing. Up front are 2 veterans, Captain Tadeusz Wrona, 57, and First Officer Jerzy Schwartz, 51, both experienced 767 pilots. At 4:19 UTC, Flight 16 accelerates, lifts into the dark and climbs away. Gear up, flaps in. Everything feels normal. About 2 minutes after liftoff, something deep in the right main landing gear bay gives way. A Kevlar reinforced hose feeding the center hydraulic system ruptures near the retraction actuator, and fluid begins to pour out, invisible to anyone on board. On the flight deck, the first hint is subtle but chilling. Center hydraulic pressure and quantity start dropping. Then the warnings appear on ICAS. Center hydraulic system, center hydraulic quantity. The center system is dying. The 767 has 3 hydraulic systems, left, right and center, that move flight controls, flaps and landing gear. Lose one and the others can still fly the airplane, but some jobs belong to a single system. On Flight 16, the center system normally drives the landing gear up and down. The crew pull out the quick reference handbook and run the checklist for hydraulic system pressure C only. They isolate the damaged system and confirm that the left and right hydraulics are normal. The 767 still handles normally, but one capability is gone. From this moment on, normal hydraulic extension of the landing gear is gone. They'll have to rely on the alternate system, an electromechanical backup that releases the up locks and lets the gear fall into place under gravity. They don't decide that alone. At 4:39 UTC, the crew send an ACARS message to LOT's Operations Center explaining the failure and asking, continue to Warsaw or turn back. At 5:01, Maintenance Control replies, continue to the planned destination and follow the QRH. It's a company-supported decision to press on. So Flight 16 cruises east. Passengers unaware, flight control smooth. 2 hydraulic systems carrying the load. The plan is simple. Arrive in daylight, use the alternate gear system, land with an abnormal checklist but a normal runway. What no one in the cockpit realizes is that the leak isn't their only problem. Behind the first officer's seat on a low panel of circuit breakers, another failure is already waiting in silence, on small switch in the wrong position, ready to turn their backup into nothing at all. Once the ACARS reply comes back, the line is drawn. Continue to Warsaw, follow the QRH. Manage the flight on the remaining systems. Hours after leaving Newark, Flight 16 is a thin white streak over the North Atlantic. In the cabin, it feels like any overnight crossing. Dim lights, shades down, passengers half asleep under blankets. Up front, it's different. The center hydraulic system is gone, boxed in by the checklist. On the panel, its gauges sit near zero. A dead limb the aircraft can live without, but not ignore. The left and right systems hum along normally, powering controls, flaps and brakes. The jet flies smoothly, but the cockpit feels like an uneasy normal. Continuing is not a gamble. LOT's maintenance control has told them to press on to Warsaw and the manuals back it up. 2 healthy hydraulic systems, full control, no fuel emergency, and solid weather at home base. Warsaw means daylight, familiar procedures, company engineers, and a long runway. The captain and first officer lean into that plan. They brief the arrival as an abnormal, not a disaster. Use the alternate flap system, accept a slightly higher approach speed. Be ready for different handling in the flare. And when it's time, they'll use the backup gear system, an electromechanical release that lets the landing gear drop under its own weight. First Officer Schwartz knows that system in a way most pilots never will. 3 years earlier, on another flight to Warsaw, he used it in a real emergency and watched 3 green lights appear when hydraulics couldn't do the job. That memory adds a quiet layer of confidence over the tension. In the back, no one has heard the words hydraulic failure. Cabin service runs. Trays come and go, someone laughs at a movie, someone else fills out a crossword. The only hint of abnormality is in the cockpit, in the way the pilots check and recheck every step of the plan. All of it rests on a single assumption. When they reach Warsaw and flip that alternate gear switch, the system will be there for them. Hours later, the ocean is gone and Poland is ahead. As Warsaw appears on the navigation display, Flight 16 is ready. Fuel is down, weight is good, daylight and a long runway wait. Talk of an abnormal landing turns into real actions as the thrust levers ease back, and the 767 starts down toward home. In the cockpit, the briefing becomes reality. Alternate flaps configure early, then use the alternate gear system. Instead of a smooth hydraulic sweep, the flaps creep down electrically slower, but exactly what they expect with the center hydraulics dead. Now it's time for the gear. The captain moves the lever to down. Normally, there's a thump of doors opening, a rumble through the airframe, 3 sets of wheels swinging into the wind, and 3 green lights on the panel. This time, nothing. No rumble, no drag, no lights. The center hydraulics are gone, so trouble with normal extension isn't a surprise. This is why the backup exists. They shift to Plan B. The alternate gear extension system is selected, an electromechanical backup that should release the up locks and let gravity drop the gear. Nothing. No change in speed, no gear lights. They run the QRH again, confirm switches, and try once more. Same result. The gear refuses to budge. The normal hydraulic route won't extend the gear. The backup route, the alternate system they've been counting on all flight, appears dead as well. The landing gear is still locked in its valves. They tell ATC LOT operations and maintenance control. The first approach is broken off and Flight 16 is vectored into a holding pattern near Warsaw, while the crew and experts on the ground search for an answer. The first officer unstraps and twists to the circuit breaker panel behind him. Guided by engineers on the radio, he hunts for specific breakers, pulling and resetting them. Each time he sits back down, the panel in front of them still shows the same thing: no gear. He never touches the one small breaker that could bring the alternate system to life, sitting low on the panel, easy to overlook, with no warning light to betray it. In the cabin, tension starts to build. Passengers notice the turns and the extra time in the air. Cabin crew know there's a technical issue, but only the cockpit sees how serious it is. Somewhere above Warsaw, Flight 16 is now flying with no way to lower its landing gear. A gear-up landing is no longer a distant line in a checklist. It's becoming real. The holding pattern over Warsaw tightens into a loop. Every lap feels heavier. They've tried normal and alternate extension. The landing gear is still locked in the valves and fuel keeps ticking down. On the ground, the response escalates. A 767 is circling with no landing gear indication. So the call goes out to the Polish Air Force. 2 F-16s are scrambled to intercept Flight 16. Soon the fighters arrive, gray shapes sliding in beside them. One tucks in on each wing, then both drop below and ahead to look straight at the underside. What they see confirms the crew's worst fears. The Boeing is completely clean. No nose gear, no main gear, no doors hanging, no wheels half out. Only the extended tail skid hints at the abnormal configuration. That verdict comes back over the radio and something shifts in the cockpit. Until now, the crew could imagine a partial extension, a jam, something stuck mid-travel. Now they know nothing has moved at all. The gear is still sealed away. In the cabin, some passengers and cabin crew spot the fighters out the windows. A combat jet pacing them at arm's length is a sight few expect. That's the moment this stops feeling like a delay and starts feeling like danger. The captain tries one more thing. If somehow the op locks have released but the gear is stuck in the valves, a burst of extra G-force might shake it loose. He briefly pulls back on the controls and everyone feels heavier as the airplane presses them into their seats. Nothing, no thump, no extra drag, no green lights. The F-16s report the same picture. Gear up, tail skid out, no change. Inside the 767, the first officer juggles checklists and radio calls, while the captain holds altitude and manages fuel. With fighters confirming what the instruments already suggest, the focus shifts from how do we get the gear down to how do we survive if it never comes down. Eventually, the F-16s peel away, their job done, leaving the 767 alone in its holding pattern above its home airport, wheels still locked in the belly. Unless something changes, and soon, the crew know what they're going to have to do next. Bring a 767 into Warsaw on its stomach and trust everyone on the ground and everyone in the cabin to be ready when it slides. On the ground in Warsaw, the what if is gone. Now it's when. A fully loaded 767 is holding above the city with no gear indication, and fighters confirming the underside is clean. The tower declares an emergency, a wide body overhead, 231 people on board, and no way to put the landing gear down. Runway 33 is closed. Departures stop, arrivals divert, and fire trucks, foam tenders, and ambulances race to positions around the runway. At 12:55, the order to foam comes. Starting at the threshold, fire crews lay down a continuous strip of white along the runway 33 centerline, turning 3,000 meters of concrete into a glistening path. The foam is not there to cushion the landing. It's there to smother sparks, cut the risk of fire, and give evacuees a safer surface when they come down the slides. Up above in the hold, the discussion in the cockpit tightens. Fuel, landing weight, how many more minutes they can circle. The captain and first officer talk with ATC and lot operations and agree on a time to commit. The question is simple now. When do we leave the hold, and how do we set up the safest approach for a gear-up landing? The senior flight attendant is called to the cockpit. The message is direct. Repeated attempts to lower the gear have failed. A belly landing is no longer a possibility, it's the plan. Then she goes back into the cabin to turn that plan into preparation. The captain makes a brief announcement. There's a landing gear problem and they'll be making an emergency landing in Warsaw. Moments later, the cabin changes in seconds. Trolleys vanish, lights come up, and cabin crew move with focused urgency, checking belts and clearing aisles. They brief passengers and show how to brace. By 1:15, the full emergency response is in place. Fire, medical, and police units positioned around the foamed runway. At 1:16, Flight 16 is 12 miles out, still clean underneath. In the cockpit, final checks are done. The checklist for a gear-up landing is complete. Speeds, flap settings, and engine power are agreed. Then ATC gives them the turn. Lot Flight 16 leaves the holding pattern and starts its final inbound leg toward runway 33, the white strip of foam now directly ahead. On the ground, everyone is in position. In the cabin, 221 passengers bend into their brace positions. In the cockpit, two pilots line up a 767 for a landing with no wheels. The runway of foam is waiting. Now Flight 16 is committed to meet it. Lot Flight 16 rolls out of the turn and onto final. Ahead, runway 33 is a white strip of foam framed by fire trucks and ambulances. The 767 is configured exactly as briefed. Flaps 30 on the alternate system. Engines set, speeds agreed. On the landing gear panel, nothing has changed. No green lights, no wheels, just a blank display. Below, Warsaw slides past. It's a clear, calm day to land a jet, except this one has no landing gear. In the cabin, everything shrinks to one word: brace. Passengers fold forward, heads down, arms crossed or hands behind their necks, seatbelts tight. Cabin crew sit in their jump seats, harnesses on, eyes fixed ahead as they silently count down the last seconds. On the flight deck, the checklists are done. The captain flies, the first officer calls out heights. The job now is simple and unforgiving. Put the fuselage on the runway as gently and as straight as possible, and keep the jet on that foamed spine of concrete. The runway centerline rises in the windshield. Radio altimeter calls tick down. The foam-covered threshold flashes underneath. Impact. At about 127 knots with the nose just over 5 degrees up, the underside of Flight 16's 767 meets runway 33. The tail and aft fuselage touch first, then the belly, then both engine nacelles. The vertical load peaks a little over 1.2 G, firm but controlled. Foam erupts along the fuselage. Metal screams. Sparks rake the right engine as aluminum and concrete grind together. Underneath, metal and runway lights are torn away as the aircraft slides straight down the centerline in one long, violent shudder, until it finally grinds to a halt still on the runway, still on its belly. For a moment, there's silence. Then a new threat. About 15 seconds after touchdown, a fire warning for the right engine sounds. Friction-lit sparks inside the nacelle have started a small fire. The crew shut both engines down and fire trucks drench the right side in foam and water, beating the flames back within seconds. Once the firefighters give the word, the cabin crew trigger the evacuation. Doors open, slides boom into the foamed runway, and passengers pour out. Some running, some stumbling, some stopping to pull others up, as firefighters herd them away from the wings and engines. The evacuation is rapid and complete. Within about 90 seconds, the cabin is empty. Not one of the 231 people on board, passengers, cabin crew, or pilots, suffers any injury. When the last slide begins to sag and the last firefighter steps back, Flight 16 is left alone on runway 33, a Boeing 767 resting on scarred metal and torn nacelles, surrounded by foam and flashing lights. From a distance, it looks like the aftermath of a major crash. From the passenger list, it's something else entirely. Everyone got out alive. Once the last passenger is off the runway, Flight 16 stops being an emergency and becomes a puzzle. PKBWL, Poland State Commission on Aircraft Accidents Investigation, finds SP-LPC resting on its belly on runway 33. The damage is contained, but the question is simple. How did a 767 with two ways of lowering its landing gear arrive with neither working? Investigators start in the cockpit. On the P61 circuit breaker panel behind the first officer's seat, one detail jumps out. Breaker C829 on the battery bus distribution is pulled to off. Next to it, C4248, which protects the alternate gear motor, is still in. The flight recorders back up the crew's story. Loss of center hydraulic pressure shortly after takeoff. Isolation of that system, then gear down commands on approach followed by a belly landing, and a right engine fire warning. The timeline fits. What doesn't is why the alternate system never answered. So they tested. With SP-LPC on jacks and ground power connected, investigators push C829 back in and select alternate gear extension. The actuator runs, up locks release, and all three landing gear extend and lock normally. On the ground, the dead backup system works exactly as designed. The commission pieces together the chain. First link, the center hydraulics. In the right main gear bay, they find a fractured Kevlar, reinforced hose near the retraction actuator. A failure Boeing had already warned about in a service bulletin this aircraft hadn't yet complied with. That leak quietly drained the center system and removed the normal gear down path. Second link, the silent backup. C829 is removed and tested. Electrically it's healthy, no overload, no smaller breakers downstream opened. The problem is mechanical. The breaker head is scuffed and worn, and on this older 767 the lower rows of the P61 panel sit low and unguarded. From the first officer's seat, those breakers are hard to see. To inspect them, he has to unstrap and lean back. It would have been easy for C829 to be nudged to off at some point on the ground or in flight. PKBWL's conclusion is blunt. A single unguarded breaker almost certainly got pushed out mechanically, silently removing power from the alternate landing gear motor. There's no ICAS warning for that breaker and its status is not recorded. To the crew, the alternate switch looked live. In reality, the motor behind it had no power. In the final report, the commission condenses the accident to 3 links: a ruptured hydraulic hose that killed the center hydraulic system, an open C829 breaker that unpowered the alternate extension, and the crew who, with no indication and no checklist pointing to that panel, had almost no realistic chance of finding it in time. When the reports are finished and the wreckage photos fade, what sticks from Lot Flight 16 isn't just metal and data, it's what came next. After Warsaw, things changed. Circuit breakers low on panels gained more protection. Attention to hose routing and service bulletins sharpened. Airlines and manufacturers revisited procedures so operations and MCC could give better help. And training began to stress a simple truth: backup systems need power, and that power must be visible and guarded. In the middle of all those failures, people did their jobs to perfection. The cockpit crew flew a controlled belly landing. Cabin crew turned fear into discipline and emptied the jet without injury. ATC and emergency services built a foamed runway and fire cover that were ready when it mattered. In the end, a worn hose and a hidden breaker forced a 767 to slide on its belly down a foamed runway in Warsaw. The reason everyone walked away wasn't luck. It was preparation, coordination, and the quiet professionalism of hundreds of people, all written quite literally in a long white streak of foam. On a cold November afternoon, a Boeing 767 slid the length of runway 33 on its belly, carving a streak of foam and sparks across Warsaw's shopping airport. But when the smoke thinned and the sirens eased, 231 people stood on the tarmac unhurt. Gear-up landings on jets are rare, with 0 injuries, rarer still. That outcome wasn't luck. It came from layers of training and teamwork. Pilots who flew the landing to the stop, cabin crew who turned fear into discipline, controllers and firefighters who turned a strip of concrete into a runway of foam, and a safe corridor off the aircraft. Modern aviation is built on stories like this. Details exposed, lessons learned, accidents turned into training. In Warsaw, those lessons were not written in ink or in fire, but in a long, silent streak of foam across runway 33, a warning not to ignore the smallest link in the chain. If you want to watch another story like this, continue with our documentary on takeoff Flight 110, where survival came down to skill, timing, and good judgment.